Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to your Tuesday edition of Pelicans Daily, brought to you by Fan Arch. I am your host, David Grubb, editor in chief of thebirdrights.com. And today, the New Orleans Pelicans will officially introduce Joe Dumars as the next executive vice president of basketball operations. So, since folks have said I've been a bit too negative lately, I get this all the time. And again, I try to tell people like this is a news and analysis site. I'm a journalist, so I can only analyze the information that I have. So sometimes that is going to produce a negative response. I can't analyze something negative and turn it into a positive. If somebody, was giving you a breakdown of Warzone and somebody at the end of it came and said, "Could you be more positive about this?" You would say that's absurd. And I think right now it's hard to be very positive about some of the changes that have been made. With that in mind, I'm willing to open this new era of Pelicans basketball with an open mind. I'm willing to be open to the possibilities that Joe Dumars could be the best hire that the Pelicans have made and that he could turn this thing around. He's capable of doing so. He is an intelligent basketball mind, and I say that with no sarcasm. Joe Dumars is an intelligent basketball mind. His recent track record as an executive was not good. That's a fact. His recent hiring of coaches, his free agent signings, his draft picks were not as good at the later stages of his career with the Pistons than they were at the first. But I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt that that was the reaction to somebody trying to keep and extend an aging dynasty. And sometimes when you do that, you make some mistakes and you reach for players that you maybe wouldn't normally reach for. The process is over. That will be questioned, certainly at the press conference to introduce Mr. Dumars, but that process is over. So, in the real sense, we got to move on and move past it and start talking about the future. So, that's what'll be interesting to hear from Joe Dumars when he talks about the future. Certainly, the immediate questions are what is he going to do with Willie Green and what's going to be done with Zion Williamson. Those will be the top two topics of discussion, no doubt. Um, it'll be interesting to hear what his assessment of the organization is from the outside. If he discusses things that areas of improvement, or if he's vague and just talks about the kind of things that you hear where people just want to say hit on their touchstones and hit on the broad strokes of what it is they're trying to do. We're going to be competitive. We're going to compete for a championship. We're going to be the best team each and every day. If we hear those things, we've been down that road before. That doesn't mean that things are going to be a failure. It just means that you didn't get a particularly inspiring press conference. So I'm not going to presume that Joe Dumars is going to be a failure in charge of the Pelicans. There are a lot of questions that need to be asked and answered. Some of those can only be answered with time. Some of those, as many that can be asked today, some of those can only be answered with time, and we'll have to wait and see. Uh, but ultimately, it'll be interesting to see what Joe Dumars does as far as restructuring the front office. If he adds new faces to the office, it'll be interesting to see what his plan is for Bryson Graham and for Swin Cash. And we'll be looking forward to seeing what his role will be as far as the overall business operations of the Pelicans. Is he strictly focused on these basketball roles as the executive vice president of basketball operations, or will he have a role to play in the bigger view of the Pelicans and how they are perceived throughout the state, throughout the region? Will he have an input on the broadcast operations for the team? That was certainly a sticking point with fans this past season, both in how things got rolled out. Um, with Gulf Sports Entertainment, the Gulf Sports Entertainment Network, and the level of programming. The Pelicans have said that they are committed to improving the quality of the broadcast and the offerings on the Gulf Course Sports Entertainment Network. So we'll see, what kind of role he has there. What does he want to see out of that as the advertising kind of arm of this basketball team? So all those things will be interesting. And like I said, I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's earned that much with his career. Again, a Hall of Fame career as a player, a championship career as an executive. Um, it's just going to be. It's been a while. I mean, look, that's hard to get over because we've not seen this. This will be a big shift for the Pelicans, and it'll be a big shift for Joe Dumars. So hopefully a lot of the things that are concerns as far as the mandates that he has are assuaged by the statements that get made at the press conference. And Dumars has more influence maybe than we anticipated. That'll be interesting to see. But somebody has already come out and is excited about the Dumars hiring. Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors and frequent New Orleans Pelicans nemesis went on his own podcast and discussed some of the new hirings around the league. Um, what Draymond says is that he thinks this is part of a return to intelligent leadership in basketball. Joe Dumars to the New Orleans Pelicans, he said, Scott Perry to the Sacramento Kings. It excited me because what that says to me is people are ready to get back to basketball. Green said, like, let's bring back these real basketball minds. That's what those moves said to me. So, if you are inclined to believe Draymond Green, then there you go. There's a player within the league currently who, quite frankly, that is kind of encouraging. Whatever you may think of Draymond and how much salt you want to take, whatever he says, um, I think that certainly he is a player in the league who understands some of the dynamics as far as power goes, as far as agents go, and as far as basketball decision making goes, and what players want to see. So, if there is some excitement within players around the league and within other basketball minds around the league, then hopefully, again, I think that okay, let's see if how much influence and power Joe Dumars really has and how he chooses to wield it. Um, Draymond Green is not going to say anything, I think, to benefit the Pelicans. He's not going to speak well of the Pelicans if he doesn't have to. There's certainly been a lot of animosity between him and the city of New Orleans throughout his career for a number of reasons. And of course, the reports have come out that Joe Dumars wants to make this a more structured organization. That he wants to bring some standards in and be a lot more forceful with regard to the professionalism within the building, within the organization. If that's what we get out of this, I think that there are absolutely gains to be made on those areas. And so, yeah, I think you can be encouraged to some measure when a player of Draymond Green's stature, who is still in the league and who plays for a championship level organization, gives you a little bit of credit. That I think there's something to be said for that. Again, take that with as much salt as you will. Okay, one of the things that we do want to talk about as we get to this stage of the season and go into the off season is starting to grade the Pelicans players and looking back at this season, evaluating each individual player where they stand, and then getting into the broader notion of whether or not they are a long term fit for this organization and what the plans could be for them this off season. And let's do this alphabetically. I think that's the easiest way to do it. You don't want to go into a whole bunch of things, breaking up. Um, I could break up positions, but I might not get through a whole group in one show. So if we go alphabetically, it's a lot easier for folks who miss one to go back and find the right player to talk about and keep up as we go throughout up and down the roster and examine each one of the players. And I think, so if we're going to start and we're going to do this alphabetically, it's pretty easy to see where we begin. We start with Jose Alvarado. And Jose, in his fourth season with the New Orleans Pelicans, played 56 games, tying for the second most in his Pelicans career. He's played in the same amount of games as he played in the season before, um, and set career highs in minutes, shot attempts, points per game, 10.3 points per game, set a career high in assists, 4.6 assists per game, set career high, tied his career high in steals at 1.3. Grand Theft Alvarado still in effect tied his career high in blocks, um, and tied his career high in rebounds. Um, set a new career high in total rebounds with 2.4 rebounds per game, and shot it pretty well from the free throw line. His field goal percentage tailed off at the end of the year. There was a point when Jose was shooting right around 40% from three, was actually leading the Pelicans in 3-point shooting percentage, fell off and ended the season at just around 36%, down from a season ago where he shot 37%. His attempts were much higher. Jose shot 5.5 3-pointers per game this season. So I think with Jose, there are a lot of positives to be had here. Um, certainly his value to the Pelicans, I think, is higher than it may be with other teams because of the needs that the Pelicans have. And I think the number one thing for Jose is his intangible value. Jose means something to the players that it needs to mean that he needs to mean something to. He plays well with Zion Williamson. He plays well with Trey Murphy. He plays well with Herb Jones. He plays well as a catalyst in that second unit. Jose changes the temperature of the basketball game. And when you have a reserve player, that's what you want. You want somebody who's going to impact the game, who you're going to know that they're out on the floor when they come in. And Jose is certainly that type of player. Um, he has shown the willingness to improve as an outside shooter. He's worked tremendously on his three-point shot. He started off his career taking two three-pointers a game. He's nearly tripled that now. His three-point percentage, again, he came into the league as somebody who shot below 30% from three. And this season, for long stretches, he was an accurate three-point shooter. What Jose is not is a volume shooter, and he's not an initiator for his own scoring. His best role is always going to be as a reserve. And yes, it was, you heard him at the end of this past season talk about he wants to be prepared, knowing that DeJounte Murray will not start the regular season as a starting point guard. Jose could be thrust again into the starter's role. The Pelicans have to do everything that they can to make sure that that's not the case. His best role, and it's been proven time and time again, is coming off the bench. It's where he impacts the game the most because his level, the things that are his disadvantages, his lack of height, his lack of size, his inability to finish around the rim, those things are less of a detriment to him when he's playing in the second unit or playing in mixed groups with second units with some starters and some reserves. That's when he can really do what he does well. Like when Zion becomes the primary ball handler and with the second unit and he plays with Jose, then Jose is getting catch and shoot opportunities from beyond the arc, able to knock those down far better than when he has to initiate, bring the ball up, and then look for his own shot. Again, his size makes it difficult for him to finish at the rim. It makes it he's worked on more of the Nash dribbling, that probing Rondo style dribble of where you keep your dribble alive, get into the paint, see if the defense will react, and then pass from there. Because quite frankly, that's the best way for him to initiate offense. In a pick and roll, it's difficult because once a larger player switches on him, it's harder for him to pass the basketball. So pick and roll situations are not ideal for him. He needs to play in transition. And that is not always the way the Pelicans want to play. So that becomes difficult for Jose in the half court where he has to be a catch and shoot player. And those opportunities more often than not come with Zion Williamson. But I'll say this. Jose Alvarado is one of the few players that you don't have to worry about on a night to night basis when it comes to effort. And I think there's something to be said for that as well. Um, on a team that needs energy, Jose is always the guy willing to put the battery in somebody's back, whether it's Zion Williamson, whomever it is. You know that Jose Alvarado is not going to let those guys walk off the floor and compete. I'll say in game 82, he's still diving on the floor. He's still, um, you know, getting more bumps and bruises and planting himself and sticking his body into places where it probably shouldn't be relative to his size, but because he wants to win. And quite frankly, if you're a dude who came into the league as a second rounder or an undrafted pick, and you get the opportunity and you've worked your way up into a guaranteed NBA deal, you can't ever stop doing the things that got you there in the first place. And the reason that Jose is there is because he's been reckless with his body. It's because he's not going to back down from competition. It's because he's not going to back down bigger and stronger players. That's why he's in the NBA. So he can't afford to ever turn that off. But I think, there are times where I think Jose can be taken for granted because of the fall off against more elite competition. And you start to say, well, you can upgrade from this guy. You can move on from this guy. And I would be leery of that. And people might say, well, Grubb, you want to move on from this guy, but you don't want to move on from Jose. And I would say this again. Sometimes a player has more value to you than they do to someone else. And I don't know if Jose Alvarado playing for another team is going to do as well as he does for the New Orleans Pelicans. I don't know. Certainly, I think fans somewhere else would be endeared to him, so that fan support wouldn't be a problem. Also, at 26 years old, again, Jose came in as an older rookie. His prime, because of his size, I think is going to be shorter than other rookies. I mean, other players. You got to take advantage of Jose, um, as far as his talent and his production now. He's shown it's difficult for him to stay and be durable. He's only played 60 games in a season once. And that was in his second season. Um, Typically, he plays right around 54, 55 games per season. And if that's the case, again, other teams are not going to give you a high amount of trade value for an undersized guard who gets injured, but who has a lot of value for you, who has a lot of value for you. And I think that's where the Pelicans need to think about this when you start looking at Jose Alvarado. I think it's much like what happened with the Larry Nance situation. Larry Nance's value to the Pelicans was higher than it was for other teams, even though Larry got injured a lot. He was their best post defender and best shot blocker a season ago. And the Pelicans certainly suffered without him this season. When you give away players that who contribute an inordinate amount based depending on their salary, I think that's a mistake. And Jose's value, his salary over the next 2 seasons, $9 million over 2 seasons, $4.5 million per year. I don't think that's an inordinate amount of money to pay for someone with his contribution level. So if as far as I'm concerned, unless the Pelicans get a very good offer that includes someone else, you are grading not in the backcourt, not on the bench. I don't think you can get a better player as far as his impact on this team on the bench than Jose. If you're upgrading for a starter, if you're trying to find a starting point guard and that becomes necessary, and Jose has to be part of the deal to match a salary, then I understand. If you're getting better in the front court, if you're finding a legitimate power forward or center to play for this team and move into a starting role, then I understand that there are opportunity costs. But I don't think the Pelicans should be looking to trade Jose Alvarado. I think his value to the organization is such that they really need to hold on to him and see what over these, at least again into this season, um, with him certain to pick up that player option in 2026-27. I don't see Jose turning down his own player option. You know, his the Pelicans are where he belongs at this stage. And if you are, again, if the Pelicans decide to move on from Zion Williamson, then you can. You are in a rebuild. You certainly should. You should move any pieces that you think if you can get picks and better players for them. But in a Zion Williamson world, and that's where I'm going to operate until we find out otherwise. I think Jose Alvarado is a piece to keep for the short term. This summer, I would be working on trying to have some continuity in the backcourt, which I think will be necessary if you're going to have any success out of the gate. You need continuity in the backcourt. And right now, Jose Alvarado is the only primary ball handler you have um, to really initiate any kind of offense for this team. And Brandon Boston doesn't seem ready to get into that. We'll talk about him soon enough. But Brandon Boston, in his stints as point guard, didn't look good in that role. And we all have our frustrations with CJ McCollum anytime he's tasked with being the point guard. It just doesn't work. It's not natural for CJ. It tends to stagnate the offense. So I think, again, for Jose Alvarado, if I were giving him a letter grade this season, I'd give him a B plus A minus. The things I take away are the durability concerns, and I would take away the fade at the end of the season. But I think overall, he improved from a season ago. He embraced taking on a new and bigger role due to the injuries, and once again kept his attitude and his professionalism at a high level, and his level of competition was there every night. He's the one guy that you don't have to be concerned with competing with everything he has and leaving every ounce of basketball within him on the court on any given night. So um, tomorrow we'll have a recap of the press conference, the introductory press conference for Joe Dumars, and a reaction to that. Talk about what those answers were to the questions that we give. But until then, I hope you'll I hope you'll subscribe, and I hope you'll share. Let me know what you think, what questions you may have, and I'll try to answer them each and every day. Until the next time, I am David Grubb. You can follow me on social media. Predominantly, I'm on Blue Sky, but also you can find me at Instagram and TikTok as well. And don't forget to check out thebirdrights.com for more. Y'all be good.